This Sunday is Palm Sunday, and it's kind of hard to get into every element of the Passion account. But when you really look at all of the readings together and Jesus's experience through the Passion, you can really boil down the summary into suffering and trust. Suffering and trust. So you look back to the suffering servant story, account that we hear from the prophet Isaiah. You look at Psalm 22 and this experience of forsakenness, and then you look at the Passion of Christ, and those are that's the tension, right, between suffering and trust. Throughout our lives, really, we all experience suffering in various degrees and in different ways. Everybody suffers, and some people's suffering is just more external than others, right? And we have to recognize that everybody has their own cross to bear. So, we all experience it, and what do we do with it? What's the dynamic in there? So much of how we deal with suffering in our lives really comes down to what are our expectations in life. And not just so much what are the expectations, but how do we grope with the fact that life doesn't always meet our expectations. But on the other side of that, sometimes our expectations for when things aren't going well, sometimes God does something really great with that, So I look at, Psalm 22, I remember last year it was a really meaningful thing for me, approaching the end of Lent and celebrating Holy Week. But, long story short, the first lines of it are this, this sort of sense of despair, my God, why have you forsaken me? But it ends, if you follow the whole psalm down through the end, it ends with the conversion of the Gentiles and many people coming to faith in God. It's very contrasting images from beginning to end, and the transformation of a heart. And it's instructive for us that even when things aren't going well, to lean into faith and place our trust in God. He really can bring, extraordinary things out of it, outside of ourselves, but especially and first and foremost in our own hearts, an awareness of His presence and His fidelity to us. And Jesus in His life, I wonder if early on He knew the full way that He was going to have to go in terms of His suffering and death. Or if it was something that was revealed to Him, along the way in His ministry. I know within His ministry He already knows what's going to happen to Him, but even still, I just wonder if He knew the full extent of what was going to happen, and if His expectations for what His ministry and His life and His death were going to have to be adjusted, if you will. You get to the agony in the garden, and it's very clear that, He doesn't really want to happen to Him what needs to happen, and ask God to change it, like, if this doesn't have to happen, Father, like, don't make it happen, but if it does have to, then I'm willing to go through with it. I place my trust in you, even in this most difficult of hours. And then as He goes to the house of the high priest, as He goes before Pontius Pilate, as He takes up His cross, all along the way, it's just one more reminder that this isn't the way that, like it should be. This isn't the way that it should have to be. And yet, in the midst of it, I trust in the Father. I place my trust in you, O Lord. So, for Jesus, whether it's a managing of expectations or just the constant trust that He places in the Father to bring about the fulfillment of His promise, for us, there's, again, something instructive, something formative for us. Jesus had a much better beat on what His expectations should be than we ever will. The expectations for our life, the expectations for a given situation, other people, whatever it is. And it's not just about managing our expectations, but recognizing that things rarely are gonna meet them or match up with them. But throughout whatever we experience, good and bad, but especially in suffering, we have to place our trust in the Lord and allow Him to remind us of His fidelity to us, and trust that He will bring about the fulfillment of His promise for all good at the end of time if we remain faithful to Him. So we'll share in it if we remain faithful to Him. So, as we kind of bring this season to a close, we recognize that God's mercy has been so much more than all of the difficulties in our lives, and placing our trust in Him, and pressing forward, even in the midst of our suffering, we'll come to experience the glory of His resurrection as well. We'll come to experience all the glory that He has promised to us and the fulfillment of our hope.